Frank White is a free man.
How come you never came to see me? Who wanted to see you in a cage, man?
He served his time.
When Christopher Walken stepped out of Sing Sing in 1990, he wasn't just playing another gangster. He was about to become the blueprint for every morally corrupt anti-hero that would dominate TV for the next 30 years. But here's what nobody talks about. King of New York almost got buried alive by the very critics who would later call it a masterpiece. The film critics wanted to bury. Picture this. September 28, 1990. Movie theaters across America, audiences are walking out mid-screening, critics sharpening their knives. The Washington Times delivers a death blow, calling The King of New York possibly the worst movie ever made. Roger Ebert, the most trusted voice in cinema, gives it 2 stars and dismisses it as a sketchy screenplay and fragmented plot. The film was dead on arrival, but here's the twist nobody saw coming. Fast forward 35 years and the same worst movie ever made now sits at 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. So what changed? Well, everything. Critics finally caught up to what director Abel Ferrara knew all along. They created something that wouldn't just entertain audiences, but would fundamentally reshape how we think about heroes and villains. Before King of New York could even reach those hostile audiences, it had to survive a war with the censors. Motion Picture Association initially stopped it with an X rating, the kiss of death usually reserved for pornography. Why? Because Ferrara had created something so unflinchingly brutal that the ratings board didn't know what to do with it. After a fierce appeal, they managed to get it downgraded to an R rating, but here's the kicker. The version you probably saw wasn't the version Ferrara intended. The censored cut includes 15 minutes of completely different footage. You didn't just get a tamer version of the same movie, you got a whole different film. It's like having 2 separate director's cuts, except one was forced by Hollywood's moral gatekeepers. That opening iconic scene, Frank White walking out of Sing Sing, wasn't just atmospheric filmmaking. In the original script drafts, we see Frank reading works by Engels and Lenin in his cell. This wasn't just a drug lord getting released from prison, this was a political philosopher with a gun, turning traditional gangster narratives into something far more dangerous. Robin Hood with a body count. Ferrara wasn't just interested in making another Scarface. No, he was asking whether the city's criminals were more effective than its politicians. And in 1990 New York, with crack and economic inequality tearing the city apart, the question hit like a sledgehammer. And here's where things get really wild. Jimmy Jump, one of the most electrifying characters in crime cinema, almost never happened. James Russo was offered the part first, but he turned it down. Laurence Fishburne, already cast as a cop detective Thomas Flanagan, but Fishburne had other plans. He literally refused to leave the building until Abel Ferrara gave him a shot at Jimmy Jump. No formal audition, he just walks into the room looking exactly like the character, acting like the character, breathing like the character. Ferrara took one look at him and said, "You are hired." That's the kind of raw determination which shows up in every frame of Fishburne's performance. The hunger, the volatility, the street-smart swagger that made Jimmy Jump legendary. What makes Frank White so unsettling? It's not just Walken's natural intensity, it's his completely unique approach to dialogue. Walken reads the script without paying attention to punctuation. There's no periods, no commas, no question marks. He finds the rhythm entirely on his own, creating that distinctive, almost hypnotic delivery. And that's how we get Frank White's eerie calm, the sense that he's not performing power, he is the power. When Walken speaks, you're not hearing an anchor regurgitating lines, you're hearing a man who's rewritten the rules of language itself. Hey, if these behind-the-scenes secrets are blowing your mind, hit that like button and let us know which moment surprised you the most. And don't forget to subscribe, because what's coming next makes this look like the opening act. Hollywood didn't touch King of New York. It was too dark, it was too dangerous, too honest about America's underbelly. So Ferrara did something unprecedented. He went to Italy, where he met media mogul Silvio Berlusconi, the richest man in the country, bankrolled the entire production through intermediaries. Think about that for a second. The future PM of Italy was secretly funding one of America's most controversial gangster movies. The goal to create a bridge between Italian cinema and American crime stories. And it worked, but it also meant Ferrara had complete creative freedom to push every boundary that American studios would never allow. This film was shot entirely on location, from the real Sing Sing Penitentiary to Trump's Plaza Hotel. But here's what makes it special. Ferrara wasn't just using New York City as a pretty backdrop. He was capturing the city in crisis where gentrification and crime were colliding in real time. Every location tells a story. Queensboro Bridge represents transition. Times Square, urban decay. The housing projects show inequality. Cinematographer Bojan Bazeli used dim lighting and blue neon to create a visual language where the city itself becomes a character, sometimes beautiful, always dangerous, and never neutral. Here's where King of New York became culturally prophetic. Philadelphia rapper Schoolie D wrote and performed key tracks, but his influence went beyond the music. Chris Walken actually studied Schoolie D's mannerisms to develop the Frank White character. The swagger, the confidence, the understated menace all came from hip-hop culture. And here's the payoff. The notorious B.I.G. was so influenced by Frank White that he started calling himself the Black Frank White in his lyrics. Hip-hop didn't just embrace this movie, it crowned it, because rappers understood what the critics missed. This was their story, told with the respect and complexity it deserved. During filming, Wesley Snipes, who played Detective Flanagan, was literally living in his car. Ferrara didn't just cast established stars, he cast actors who were surviving, fighting for their shot at success. That raw desperation, that hunger for something better, that shows up in every scene. This wasn't just method acting, it was real life bleeding into art. The authenticity you felt watching King of New York comes from actors who understood what it meant to fight for survival in an unforgiving city. Abel Ferrara revealed something crucial in interviews. My dad's friends, they were Frank White type guys. They owned bars and after-hours places like the guys in Goodfellas. Who cared what you did as long as you had money to show for it? The American dream. Ferrara wasn't guessing what the world looked like, he lived it. He watched men who embodied the American dream through less than legitimate means. That's why Frank White feels so authentic, because he's based on real people who navigated the blurred lines between criminality and capitalism. Here's the most sophisticated aspect of Ferrara's direction. Every gangster in this film is performing a role within a role. Frank White wasn't just a kingpin, he knows he's playing one. Jimmy Jump isn't just volatile, he's performing volatility. This meta-theatrical approach makes the film feel like street life and theater colliding in real time, suggesting that in the world of crime and power, authenticity itself becomes a performance. Everyone's playing a character even when they think they're being real. Before The Wire explored corrupt cops and sympathetic drug dealers, before Breaking Bad gave us a chemistry teacher turned kingpin, before The Sopranos made us root for a murderous mob boss, there was Frank White, a killer with a code, a villain with vision. Critics now recognize King of New York as the prototype for morally complex protagonists who would dominate prestige television. It didn't just influence crime cinema, it created the blueprint for 30 years of storytelling about characters who can't simply be classified as good or evil. And that's the real legacy of King of New York. It proved audiences were ready for stories that respected their intelligence, that didn't need clear heroes and villains to be compelling. And if you want more deep dives into the films that changed everything, subscribe right here to Prime Time Throwback and hit that notification bell, because we're just getting started uncovering the secrets behind cinema's most influential cult classics. From a film that critics wanted to bury to the foundation of modern prestige TV, King of New York's journey proves that sometimes the most important art is the kind that makes people uncomfortable. Abel Ferrara didn't just make a gangster movie, he created a mirror that reflected America's complicated relationship with power, crime, and the endless pursuit of the American dream. 35 years later, King of New York still feels like a challenge to the system, a film that looked America in the eye and said, this is what power really looks like. And no matter how hard you try, you can't look away.